celebrated on August 30th, the date of Locke's birth. According to Locke, anything that a man has as a matter of human rights or civil rights is to remain inviolably his. And although Locke conceded that humans surrendered some natural rights in exchange for the collective protection afforded by societies, he held that basic human rights include life, liberty, property, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom to petition government. Here's a video on Individual Rights Day.
And coming to you from DRC, some sad news. Several civilians burned and hacked to death by rebels in DR Congo. 19 civilians in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo have been burned and hacked to death by Ugandan rebels, a local official said. 14 bodies were found on Saturday, a day after the incident, Kakule Kakulunga told the AFP news agency. The local chief said that the bodies were discovered by Red Cross workers who went into the nearby forest to look for those missing after the attack on the Kasanzi village in the Beni territory of North Kivu. Beni lies at the heart of an area in the Allied Democratic Forces affiliated to ISIL have mounted deadly attacks in spite of emergency security measures by the President Felix. The 19 people were killed by the rebels who plague in the territory of Beni, the ADF Kalunga said, adding that the victims were killed by bladed weapons and fire, that houses were also set ablaze. In a statement on Friday, Meleka Mulala, a spokesman of the new civil society organization in Rezondi, deplored the absence of military personnel around Beni.
In our second story, UN chief says social fabric of Ethiopia being torn apart. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned the Security Council on Thursday that a conflict in Ethiopia has spread beyond the northern Tigray region and a humanitarian catastrophe is unfolding before our eyes. Ethiopia has been embroiled in a conflict that flared 9 months ago in Tigray and which has spread to other areas. The government has also struggled to contain other outbreaks of ethnic and political violence over land and resources. Gunmen killed at least 150 people last week in western Ethiopia in an attack by an armed group against local residents, the state-appointed Ethiopian Human Rights Commission said on Thursday. Guterres said that more than 2 million people have been displaced in the conflict and millions more need aid, including food, water, shelter, and healthcare, adding at least 400,000 people are living in famine-like conditions.
Germany will offer Africa up to 70 million COVID-19 vaccine doses, Merkel says. Germany will make up to 70 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine available to Africa countries this year. Chancellor Angela Merkel said on Friday, more than doubling a previous pledge to donate 30 million. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said African leaders told the summit it is not fair that Africa has vaccinated only 2% of their 1.3 billion population, and yet the more developed countries in the north have vaccinated up to 60%. Merkel said she was confident that there could be a transfer step by step of the technology to allow production of COVID-19 vaccines in Africa. Ramaphosa thanked Merkel for championing the G20 Compact with Africa. Launched in 2017 under Germany's G20 presidency, the compact promotes private investment in Africa, aiming to ease the poverty which, along with the political instability and violence, has encouraged large numbers of Africans to head for Europe. She has been a champion of the African continent, and Africa is going to miss her greatly, Ramaphosa said.
Now in Zimbabwe, President warns youths invading farms. President Emmerson Mnangagwa warned youths who have been invading farms around the country that they risk the full wrath of the law, as the era of such actions is long gone. Addressing scores of people who gathered at Zimplat's mine in Mondorongezi yesterday, the president, who is also the commander-in-chief of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, said any youth who will continue on the lawless path of invading farms will face the music. We don't want lawlessness. Time of invasions is long past. Tomorrow, I will meet with young people who will give 500 cattle in each province. We will always support the youth as long as they behave within the law, he said. The president said the historic land reform program that redressed colonial and land imbalances at the turn of the millennium is in the past, and now the nation is focused on production in a peaceful country.
And coming to you from Nigeria with some good news, joy as parents reunited with kidnapped Nigerian students. 90 children abducted from a school in Nigeria were reunited with their parents after being held captive for nearly 3 months, part of a wave of mass kidnappings by armed gangs that have spread fear across the north of the country. Authorities say 136 children were initially seized at the school, though some later escaped. One, a 5-year-old boy, died during captivity. The kidnappers had initially said 6 had died, but this proved to be a lie to scare parents into paying. Mass kidnappings of school children, once a notorious tactic by Islamic militants to intimidate the population, have become a money-spinning industry for armed gangs demanding ransom payments. Authorities say 1,000 children have been abducted since December in northwestern Nigeria. The 90 school children, along with the 2 other abductees who were not identified, were released late on Thursday. Parents who sent a total of 65 million naira and 6 motorbikes as ransom, 3 parents told Reuters. We will do whatever it takes to bring them to justice, Niger State Governor Abubakar Sani Bello said of the kidnappers. We've put in place all the necessary measures to hunt down and prosecute those involved in this heinous act.
In our next story, Mali's former interim president and prime minister released from house arrest. Mali's former interim president Bandao and prime minister Mokhtar Owane have been released from house arrest by the authorities who ousted them in May, a committee monitoring the post-coup transition said on Friday. Their detention by military officers in May marked Mali's second coup since the overthrow of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita the previous August. The political upheaval alarmed regional powers and allies such as France, who feared it could delay a promise to return to civilian rule via democratic elections scheduled for February 2022. The committee, which includes representatives of West African Regional Bloc ECOWAS and the African Union, said in a statement that it welcomed a decision to lift restrictions. The committee reaffirms its support for the process of transition in Mali, it said.
And from Chad, Habre disgraced former president of Chad buried in Senegal. Former Chad President Hissène Habre, who died this week while serving a life sentence for war crimes, was buried on Thursday in Senegal after a muted funeral in the car park of a half-built mosque littered with construction equipment. Habre ruled Chad from 1982 to 1990. During his political, police tortured, killed and raped tens of thousands of suspected enemies, often on Habre's orders. Habre was arrested in 2013 after a long campaign by victims and right groups and was sentenced to life in prison in 2016. He died on Thursday at age 79 after contracting COVID-19. About 200 people attended the funeral, many of them sporting the traditional robes and headscarves of Chad.
In our next story, European migrant crisis. More than 500 people rescued off Italian island. Italian Coast Guard vessels have rescued 539 migrants from a fishing boat drifting off the island of Lampedusa. The rescue on Saturday delivered one of the largest numbers of migrants to the Italian island in a single day. Women and children were among those on board. Some of the migrants, who had been traveling across the Mediterranean Sea from Libya, reportedly displayed signs of violence. Investigators are looking at the possibility that the migrants may have been falsely imprisoned in Libya, local media reports. The island has a migrant camp that was originally designed to hold fewer than 300 people. It now has more than 5 times that number, with many more held outside on the dusty road. Most arrive from countries that do not qualify for asylum.
And from Cameroon, Cameroon's main port city battles mounting flood peril. In mid-August, like every year during the rainy season, the informal neighborhood of Makape, Mesoke, was invaded by water in the heart of Cameroon's economic capital. Under the effect of global warming, floods are becoming more and more frequent in this port city of more than 3 million inhabitants, which is constantly expanding. Each year, nearly 110,000 new city dwellers move into the megapolis, and the gap between supply and demand for available land is growing. The temperature of the metropolis is increasing at the global level. According to the IPCC, floods will displace an average of 2.7 million people in Africa, and flood-related costs could increase tenfold by 2050 to $60 billion a year in the 136 largest coastal cities.
Now in Malawi, ex-minister arrested over honeymoon hotel bill. A former minister in Malawi has been arrested for allegedly paying for his honeymoon with public funds. Charles Mchacha, who was the irrigation minister in ex-president Peter Mutharika's administration, is alleged to have used ministry money for a top hotel suite for him and his bride in Blantyre after the wedding. Malawi's Nation newspaper tweeted that 2 other senior government officials were also arrested by the Anti-Corruption Agency. The Anti-Corruption Bureau says all 3 will be charged with abuse of office, neglect of duty, and theft. They have all denied any wrongdoing.
And in Ghana, Ghana's chief imam donates to cathedral project. Ghana's chief imam Sarabutu has donated more than $8,000 to support the construction of a controversial national cathedral. Ghana has a history of interreligious harmony, although the donation is regarded as unusual. The 102-year-old Sleric said that the gesture was to strengthen peaceful coexistence between Christians and Muslims. The leader of Ghana's minority Muslim community has said before that he wants to ensure that his legacy is peace. 2 years ago, he attended an Easter Catholic church service, causing a stir on social media. The government recently launched an initiative to encourage Ghanaians to donate money towards the construction of the cathedral. It is to be built in the capital, Accra, and is expected to cost more than $100 million. The complex is to be completed in 2024 and is to include a Bible museum and a 5,000-seat auditorium.
Looks worth visiting. All right, in our next story, tourists return to Egypt's resorts after months of restrictions. After 18 months of travel restrictions, tourists can once again enjoy the beauty of ancient tombs. Tourism accounts for 9% of the country's GDP, but according to the tourism industry, less than a quarter of the usual number of tourists visited Egypt in 2020, signaling a 55% fall in GDP. The industry has already suffered from instability in the country following the 2011 political unrest. But since the beginning of 2021, authorities have started to regain hope. COVID restrictions for tourists are also relatively light. A single negative PCR test upon arrival has been requested since July 2020. Ministry of Tourism statistics show a noticeable increase in tourist numbers. Since the beginning of 2021, Egypt has welcomed 300,000 tourists every month. By April, this figure rose to more than 500,000 a month, around 50% of visitors pre-pandemic. Good on Egypt. Everybody's trying to figure out what to do with regards to the tourism business. Now, in Namibia, there's a conversation that's happening, or that needs to happen, and that's between desert lions, being able to take care of them, and their relations with human beings. When you look at the desert lions in Namibia, we actually cannot say Hakuna Matata. Let's figure out exactly what's going on after the break. Now, Isaac Smith is well known in Namibia as an environmentalist that heads the organization DAURA, Desert Lions Human Relations Aid. DAURA has been having a hard time recently with a number of challenges having arisen as a result of the drought that has plagued northwestern regions of Namibia for longer than 6 years now. Good morning, Isaac. Thank you for joining us.
A very good morning, guys, and good morning to the viewers.
Yes,
Good
good
having
morning.
you here. All right, let's get straight into it. Now, just give us a quick rundown of who you are and also how long you and, let's say, your partner in crime, photographer Inky Mant, have been involved in what you do in the Kaoko Veld and Damara land, which is known in Namibia as the Kunene region.
Yes, Inky is more well known because of photography. We've been frequenting the Damara land area, which is part of the home ranges of the desert adapted lions, for over 32 years. We were privileged to have retired at a relatively early age, and we pursued our hobby of photography. And as big nature lovers, we went about our business of visiting the area regularly and passionately pursuing the photography. And we saw a lot through the lens, of course, and we got known by the locals. We also started following the local researcher, Dr. Philip Stander's work, and we got word of the desert lions, and we got interested in that. The locals then approached us regarding the human-lion conflict issues experienced in Damara land. And up until then, to us, it was just all rosy, peachy, and romantic. We then got drawn into and got to better understand the plight of the local farmers. And hence, DAURA was born, the Desert Lions Human Relations Aid, upon the insistence of the local conservancies to assist them, and that we could also, of course, see that they urgently needed help. Now, our work sounds very romantic, but you spend most of your time digging yourself out of sand, getting bitten by bugs, camping out next to corals, smelling of cow dung for days after. Luckily, that doesn't bother us, but the people around us. So that culminated into DAURA actually playing a role as one of the NGOs, and there are quite a number, who actually attempts to mitigate the human-lion conflict in order to assist the farmers, and then, of course, also to conserve these very rare animals.
Okay. Would you mind giving us an update about the recent sad history of the desert adapted lions and what has been done so far in saving this unique creature for our future generations?
Yes, I'm sure many of you will be aware of the recent videos and photos in the mainstream media and also on social media portraying starving lions, desert adapted lions, in and around and also outside of their home ranges in Damara land. Now, that is the reason for that was partly because of less than ideal conservation practices and management, which as a result affected the prey density on which these predators depend in the area. Being a desert, you can imagine it's a very hostile and harsh environment to survive, which makes them as unique as they are. Normal savanna lions wouldn't last a week. But of course, when the prey got less, also the drought kicked in about 7 to 8 years ago, around 2012, after very good rains. And as a result, the predators got more dependent on predating on livestock outside of their normal home ranges, goats and cattle. And typically they would conduct night attacks. These corrals in Damara land of the subsistence farmers being very flimsy and dilapidated, it was easy pickings for the lions, and they actually got dependent and used to predating livestock. And of course, this got totally out of control. We then intervened and also supplied material to fortify the kraals, as did other NGOs, which then effectively halted the night attacks. But then the lions adapted and they started their day attacks. So it is all out of need and desperation, which could have been prevented had ecology being in equilibrium, in balance. In other words, if the lions or these predators could be sustained by normal and natural prey. But of course, as explained, that did not happen, and intervention became necessary, and it became a big problem.
All right. Now, how does all of this relate to a statement made by the Namibian Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, which recently stated that Namibia's lion population continues to grow steadily? They spoke of the wildcat's population standing at approximately 800 countrywide, which included 96 to 124 lions in Kunene, 305 to 366 in Etosha, 39 in Kavango, 52 in Zambezi, and over 100 on private land.
To begin with, you can deduct the 100 lions on private land because that's got no real value for conservation. Mostly because of legislation, these lions are mostly sterilized and not allowed to breed in captivity, according to Namibian legislation, which is right and good. Part of those are also for profit-driven entities as used as tourist attractions, and then some are to be found in captivity in sanctuaries, like Nankuse, doing good work. We find, and we can only speak for the lines west of the 150 millimeter isolated rainfall line, the desert-adapted lines, in other words, and we found their numbers to dwindle down to 65 to 75 at the moment. We've previously heard Etosha had about a year or two ago, the official numbers were 420 to 470. So in our humble view, the numbers are dwindling, and 700 lions in a vast country like Namibia is really simply a handful if you consider genetic diversification. They are actually sitting on little islands and pockets of small populations. Good work is being done in the Zambezi by the Kwandu Carnival Project, so those numbers are steadily increasing. But in general, worldwide, the habitat has shrunk immensely of lions, and they really in a desperate need for proper conservation, and the numbers in our book are steadily dwindling.
Isaac, a while ago you wrote about an interesting concept where you expressed definite ideas about how conservancies should run in the future. So as ensure that Wildlife Conservancy does not serve as an open hunting ground managed at the whim of people who might intend well but are not sufficiently trained to actively manage those conservancies. Could you kindly explain it to us what this entails? And we have just a short time for this response.
Right. Namibia has pioneered the community-based natural resource management concept, which is now 26 years old. And like everything evolving, we are of the view that it needs to be reviewed. And time has proven that the conservancy personnel, if you will, and management do not always have the acumen or training or experience to manage wildlife in a park. Our suggestion is that more areas are availed as protected areas, like the Palmbach concession, where they are protected through legislation, because as it stands now, they double as emergency grazing in dry times, which then puts pressure on the wildlife and the predators prey, as well as they move off since they are in competition with livestock. So it's a lose and fast rule. We are of the opinion that it should be managed and optimized. The revenues should then be optimized for the benefit of these communities, but proper management by experienced entities running it as custodians is what is needed, and that will benefit the whole model in the long term.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for disseminating that important information. We certainly value it. Thank you for joining us on Africa Good Morning.
Thank you so much.
All right, we were just talking to Mr. Isaac Smith, who is an environmentalist and the head of the organization DAURA, Desert Lions Human Relations Aid. It's one thing for us to get along, it's another thing for us to get along with nature, which after all sustains us all. Stick around, we'll be back after the break.
I live in a country with abundance of some of the highest quality diamonds in the world. They have become the heritage and endowment of the Namibian people. Proceeds from the diamond sales are invested by the Namibian government to expedite infrastructure development, healthcare services, and education for the benefit of all Namibian people. But I guess the question that we really need to answer is, who am I? I am the custodian of Namibia's diamonds. I am Namdia. I'm Namibian.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. And you know, here in studio, we love talking to our correspondents who are placed all over Africa. And right now, we'll be speaking to Mike Sichula all the way from Zambia. Mulibwanji, Mike.
Bueno, Mulibwanji. Africa, good morning.
Good morning. So to go into our first story, former President Edgar Lungu has ruled himself out from the active politics, saying he wants to rest. Rest, Buffett. Tell us about that.
Yes, yesterday, former President Mr. Edgar Lungu was worshipping for the first time publicly after he lost power, that is, at one of the local churches here in Lusaka yesterday. He was accompanied to the church service by the First Lady, the former First Lady, Mrs. Esther Lungu. Then thereafter, he had an opportunity to speak to journalists who had gathered to get what he feels like after losing power. And he came out clearly to say he does not want to contest the 2026 elections. And those people who are advising him to stick on are just wasting their time. So what it is that the former ruling party, the PF, are now going through a process of rebranding and to rebuild ahead of the 2026 elections. And one of the other reasons why President Lungu is stepping aside from politics is that for him to get his benefits of having served as a president, our constitution demands that somebody should step away from politics, should not be involved in active politics. So I believe it is one of those reasons that Mr. Lungu is getting away from politics so that he doesn't compromise his statesmanship as a former head of state, as well as not also be antagonizing with the ruling party, that is the UPND. And during the same vein, he also told Zambians to give Mr. President Hakainde Hichilema chance to deliver on the campaign promises. He said there's no need for Zambians to frustrate President Hichilema because he believes he has the mandate of Zambians and he must be given an opportunity to deliver on the promises that he made to them during the last 15 years he was in opposition.
What an interesting step to take, actually.
Indeed. I mean, he should rest. He should rest. There's only so much you can do at this point in time. In fact, it is kind of like a forced leave, but you know what? We love to see it. Why? Because there's someone who absolutely cannot rest right now, and that is President Hakainde Hichilema, who is this week expected to unveil other members of his cabinet almost a week after taking over government. Tell us about it.
Yes, a number of people have been questioning the delay or why President Hichilema is not naming his cabinet almost a week after he gained power from President Lungu. So what he is saying is that he wants to appoint people based on merit. He does not want to appoint people just because he wants to appoint a cabinet to begin to run government. President Hichilema has only since since 24th of August when he took over the instruments of power, he has only named one cabinet minister, and this cabinet minister is in charge of finance. Dr. Stumbeko Musokotwane is the minister of finance, and Dr. Musokotwane has been in government before. That's him on your right. That's Dr. Musokotwane. He's been in government before during the reign of former President Rupia Banda. That is from 2008 to 2011 under the same portfolio of Minister of Finance. So the basic reason for appointing him is that he must begin to prepare the national budget. He has about less than 90 days to prepare the national budget, which comes up. So that's one of the reasons that he was the first to be appointed. Then later, yesterday evening, President Hakainde Hichilema announced changes from the defense forces, that is from the Zambia Army, Zambia Air Force, the Zambia National Service, as well as the Zambia Police. He made he made a wholesale changes, and he's saying this is likely to continue to this week, so that he builds a formidable team to deliver to the expectations of Zambians.
And in our third story, some good news that health authorities have actually recorded a fewer positive COVID-19 cases. And before you get into that, let us just be reminded to wear our masks, sanitize, social distance, and, preferably stay at home, because together we can beat COVID-19. Mike.
Yes, the Ministry of Finance has been recording some positive results in terms of managing the coronavirus pandemic. So in the last 1 week, for instance, like yesterday's statistics, there were only about 5 related deaths from the pandemic. So that, as you can see from there. Then in terms of the recovery rate, it is now standing at over 97%, which is good according to health authorities. And they are attributing this to the warm weather as number one. Then number two, people have not dropped the guard in terms of face masking. Social distancing is proving to be a challenge, but a number of people have taken one of the guidelines to prevent themselves, and it is working for the Ministry of Finance. In terms of national vaccination, the country is still below in terms of what they want to achieve. We are less than 5% in terms of national vaccination, which is also a worrying state of affairs for health authorities. And they are now calling upon members of the public to come forward and get vaccinated because they're saying probably during the coming 3 months or so, the nation is going to experience the fourth wave going into 2022. So they're saying, let people come get vaccinated so that we contain the virus. And just last week, in terms of the deaths, there was no death that was recorded.
Can you hear me, Mike?
Yes, I can.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt you, but thank you very much for bringing us those statistics, and we'll certainly be following through with all the stories you brought us from Zambia.
Thank you very much, Africa. Good morning. Do have a pleasant week.
You too.
We certainly hope to have a pleasant week. I wish we could talk to Mike for longer, but unfortunately I don't control time just as much as I don't control the weather. All I can do is check out the forecast up next. Welcome back to Africa. Good morning on Monday, the 30th of August, 2021. It's time for us to get into your economic news stories. And we start off in Nigeria. Buhari elated as NNPC breaks jinx, declares 287 billion naira profit, first in 44 years. President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday hailed the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation for declaring a profit after tax of 287 billion naira for the year 2020, the first in its 44-year history. Buhari stressed that NNPC's losses were reduced from 803 billion naira in 2018 to 1.7 billion in 2019. This is just as the corporation yesterday attributed the historic profit it recorded in its 2020 audited financial statement to the adoption of cost-cutting measures, which was about 30% in the last 2 years. Buhari, who doubles as Minister of Petroleum Resources, disclosed that the profit was made possible by the prudent management of the country's resources.
From Nigeria to South Africa, SAA poised for takeoff in September. South African Airways has announced that it expects to resume operations on the Johannesburg-Cape Town route and other African destinations on the 23rd of September. The carrier has not taken to the skies since early last year, partly due to the advent of COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent hard lockdown, as well as the need to finalize its business rescue process. The national carrier came out of business rescue at the end of April last year. The aviation sector is currently going through a testing period, and we are aware of the tough challenges that lie ahead in the coming weeks. We thank South Africa for the support and we have received in us getting us where we are today. We are now poised for takeoff, and we see this as a major milestone for SAA and the country. He said it looks like we are flying to Cape Town.
That's a plan worth considering. In our next story, Congo prepares to assume OPEC's rotating presidency. Congo will take over the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries' rotating presidency in 2022, succeeding neighbors Angola. The oil cartel's Secretary General Mohamed Bakindo was in the Central African country this week, where he met with the country's leaders. With 2.9 billion barrels of oil reserves and 10 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, the Congo is driving development across the entire energy value chain. To broaden its tax base, the government has cancelled tax and customs exemptions granted to oil companies for more than 30 years, a move welcomed by activists. Congo is the third largest oil producer in sub-Saharan Africa, after Nigeria and Angola, with an estimated production of 336,000 barrels of crude oil per day.
And from Zambia, new leader takes Zambia from defaulter to investor darling. Zambia's new president, Hakainde Hichilema, is turning the nation's economic fortunes around barely a week into the job. The Southern African nation's currency and dollar bonds have surged to become the world's best performers since he was announced as the winner of 12 August elections. His pick of economist Situmbeko as finance minister has gone down well with the investors, as have his pronouncements that he'll speedily conclude a financing deal with the International Monetary Fund and court foreign investments. Zambians have grown used to bad news in recent years. Hichilema, who is 59, studied economics in the UK, served as a chief executive officer of an accounting firm, and unsuccessfully ran for the presidency 5 times before finally winning this month. The late president, whose party he dislodged from power, dubbed him Calculator Boy, a snipe at his economic jargon-laden speeches. I'm telling you, 5 times is a loss and the 6th time is a charm. I'm telling you that.
Yes, indeed, if you have the patience for it. All right, in our last economic news story for now, South Africa's affluent are struggling to pay off their home and car loans. According to Experian, South Africa's Consumer Default Index, the rates people defaulted on their loans for the first time decreased in the second quarter of the year. The CDI is designed to measure the rolling default behavior of consumers with home loans, vehicle loans, personal loans, credit cards, and retail loan accounts. Although consumer debt remains at 1.9 trillion rand, the index improved from 4.33 in March to a reading of 4.03 in June 2021, Experian said. Experian noted that the affluent segment boasts an average opening home loan balance of over 1.2 million rand and an average opening vehicle loan balance greater than 450,000 rand, making them highly exposed to secured credit. The significant improvement in CDI CDI in 2021 second quarter stems from credits granted, particularly in the retail industry, where many providers opted for more stringent lending criteria, along with the impacts of the hard lockdown criteria at the start of the pandemic. All right, those have been our economic news stories. You know what comes up next? Economic indicators.
A fabric mask acts as a barrier to prevent the spread of the virus. It must be used correctly and always combined with other measures to protect yourself and everyone else. When wearing a fabric mask, clean your hands before putting it on. Inspect the mask and do not use it if it is damaged or dirty. Cover your mouth, nose and chin. Adjust the mask to your face, leaving no gaps on the sides. Avoid touching the mask while wearing it. Change your mask once it gets dirty or wet. To take off the mask, clean your hands first. Remove it by the straps behind the head or ears without touching the front of the mask. As you remove the mask, pull it away from your face. Clean your hands after taking off any mask. If you need to reuse a fabric mask, store it in a clean, resealable bag. Hold the mask at the elastic ends when removing it from the bag and make sure it is not dirty or wet before using it again. Wash fabric masks in soap or detergent, preferably with hot water, at least once a day. Make sure you have your own mask and do not share it with others. When wearing a mask, make sure you know how to put it on, use it, remove it, and discard it or wash it correctly. Remember that a mask alone cannot protect you. When wearing a mask, continue to adopt other measures to prevent the spread of the virus. Stay at least 1 meter away from others. Clean your hands frequently and thoroughly, and avoid touching your face and mask. Stay safe, and let's all prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning, and you know that we like hearing about what's happening, the ins and the outs of what's happening here in Africa. Now we'll be speaking to our favorite correspondent in Cape Town, Mr. Ari Hoogad. Ari, how are you?
Yes, Naledi, nice to talk to you. Very good morning. I like your red shirt, and I'm not sure if it's associated to any football team.
I don't
So
like
we'll.
this
There's a
shade,
few.
but it's okay.
There's a few of
Tell
them
us
that
how to
play in
keep
red.
fit with the
So
sports.
yes, it's a difficult time. Some win and some lose, and some are happy this morning and some sad. And we'll start off with the English Premier League. It's a very competitive and a very good football league, of course. The world's best playing there. And some of the results from the weekend: Manchester City, the defending champions, they still doing great. They beat Arsenal at home by 5 goals to 0, a very big score. But Arsenal got a red card in the first half, so that made it a bit easier for Man City, I would think. And then also Leicester City, always contending. They had a good away win against Norwich. 2-1 was the score. And in the big game of the weekend, Liverpool playing at home against Chelsea. That game ended 1-1. So points dropped there for Liverpool, you would think, especially with Chelsea having a red card also just on the end of the first half. So 1-1 Liverpool versus Chelsea. And then Tottenham Hotspur, they continue their good start of the season. They beat Watford at home by 1-0. And then a good win for Manchester United. They played away to Wolverhampton, and that was 1-0
Just
was the
saying.
score there. Absolutely. Just reminding everyone about the red. Absolutely. Uh, so also some other football news. It's an interesting world at the moment. It's interesting with COVID, but who would have thought that Lionel Messi would be making his debut for PSG this weekend? They had a 2-0 win. He didn't score a goal. Mbappe scored goals, but also Ronaldo will be joining also Manchester United. That's going to happen. There's international week this week with qualifying for the World Cup football. And then on the 11th of September, Ronaldo will probably make his comeback for Manchester United. On to some cricket news. It's still England that hosts India. It's a big series for them, a 5-test series that's played in England. And that was in England that came back to level the series 1-1. That was a great win for them over the weekend. Quite comprehensive. They bowled out India in the first innings for just 78 runs and then made 432 for them in the first innings. That was England, Root making 121 runs. And then when it was India in the second innings, could only make 278. So it is a win for England. Innings and 76 runs, and that's Ollie Robinson there in the middle. He was brilliant in the second innings of India. He took 5 wickets. Maybe a bowler to look forward to for England to play many more tests. Also, some international one-day cricket for Zimbabwe, closed here in the Southern Hemisphere, but they played in Ireland. They've got a 5-series T20 that they're playing at the moment. They won the first one. Zimbabwe won the first one on Friday by 3 wickets, but yesterday it was Ireland that came back. They won the second one by 7 wickets. That was in the third T20 game will be played in their series on Wednesday, this Wednesday, the 1st of September. Let's go on to some golf news. There was some great golf action in the USA. The PGA Tour, it is the BMW Championships that was played yesterday. And it was a playoff of 7 holes between Bryson DeChambeau and Patrick Cantley. And it was Patrick Cantley that came through to win the playoff. That was a great win for him. Eric van Rooyen of South Africa did really great. He finished tied 5th on 21 under par. And by scoring a 65 in his last round, he qualified for the last 30. Only 30 players go through now for the last Tour Championship tournament in Atlanta. That's going to be next weekend, or this coming weekend. Also, Louis Oosthuizen, Southern African interest, will be playing in that top 30. Lots of money they're playing for, and they all qualify for all the majors to be played. In the European Tour, real quickly, it was Rasmus Højgaard that did well. He won the European Masters that was on 13 under par. He finished with a 63. Van Wiesberger was second on -12. And Southern African interest, Darren Fichart, tied 21st on 6 under. Also, Daniel van Tonder, also 6 under par. So great performance there from the Southern Africans. On to some Formula One racing news. If you're a Formula One racing fan, yesterday was a bit of a frustrating one. It was raining the whole day there in Belgium, and for the first time ever, there was aborted Formula One. The winner was declared because there was too much rain on the track, and they did the 2 formation laps behind the safety car, and it was declared a result. Everybody got half the points they would normally get, and so they just finished in the positions they would have started. But all the hard work was done on Saturday with the qualifying, Friday and Saturday. It's very competitive for the qualifying, obviously. And the first on the pole position for the qualifying was Max Verstappen, so he was declared the winner in yesterday's Formula One Championship. He's there with Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton qualified in 3rd position, so that's the position he took on the podium. And a great result also for George Russell of Williams. A bit of a surprise in the qualifying on Saturday. It was a bit wet then as well. He came through and he qualified in 2nd position. He was 2nd on the grid. And so he was on the podium. It was his first ever podium. He came in 3rd officially. So points at the moment, it was Lewis Hamilton, or it's Max Verstappen that got a bit closer to Lewis Hamilton. There was half points in there as well because of yesterday's funny result. It's Lewis Hamilton now on 202.5 points for the season, and Max Verstappen is just behind him, 199.5. So there's just 3 points in it. The next Formula One Grand Prix is this coming weekend. It's the Dutch Grand Prix, and the first time since 1985 that there will be a Dutch Grand Prix. So lots to look forward to this coming weekend. Also, let's close with some cycling news, and great news for Southern Africa. It was the downhill, it was the World Championships, the BMX World Championships that took place this weekend. And great news for Southern Africa is that the men's downhill world champion is from South Africa. He is Greg Minnaar. Greg Minnaar won. He's 39 years old. It's his 4th title. He won also in 2003. He won in 2012 and 2013. So a great victory for Greg Minnaar. He came in a time of 3 minutes and 28 seconds, all downhill, very fast, very dangerous. And the women's race there, that is the women's winner there. It's Nicole Meriam from France. She was the winner in the women's section. And then quickly also in the cross country, it was Evie Richards of Britain then won the cross country. That was done in 1 hour and 23 minutes. And Nino Schurter of Switzerland, he was the winner of the men's downhill. So lots of sports that happened all over the globe. And don't forget, from today, it is the US Open tennis tournament that starts today. Flushing Meadow in the USA, always a big one on the sporting calendar. And Lloyd Harris of South Africa, one of the Southern African interest to hopefully do well in the tournament. That's the sports news from all over the globe. Hope you have a great Monday and a great week. And we talk again on Friday. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you very much, I, for bringing us the sports news. As you were talking about the downhill champion from South Africa who's been winning from 2003, I was inspired because in 2003 I was in grade 7 and all I've done since then is grow a beard. But, you know, that's why we have sports people to inspire us. This is Africa Good Morning. After the break, your headlines. Africa Good Morning has been streaming live from 7 a.m., bringing you the news and current affairs from the SADC region and beyond. Now, if you perhaps missed our top stories at the top of the hour, or if you need a recap, worry not, here are your headlines. Several civilians burned, hacked to death by rebels in DR Congo. UN chief says social fabric of Ethiopia being torn apart. Germany will offer Africa up to 70 million COVID-19 vaccine doses, Merkel says. Zimbabwe, president warns youths invading farms. Nigeria, Buhari elated as NNPC breaks jinx, declares 287 billion naira profit, first in 44 years. And in football, we spoke about the English Premier League results from the weekend, which, of course, I wasn't particularly keen on, but those have been our stories.
Yes, those have been our stories, and now we have officially reached the end of today's show. But do catch the repeat at 8 o'clock here on our live show. And don't forget that we actually have NMH Live TV, which is oneup2.com, so do be sure to look at that. But don't forget to wash your hands, sanitize, wear your mask, social distance, stay at home, and just protect yourself from COVID. Get the jab. You know how we do. We have to protect ourselves. We love you here at Africa Good Morning. I go by the name of Naledi Kunene.
I'm Ashwin Berry. Until tomorrow, Swera Jaganaka.